and welcome. I'm Izzy at Minerva. Today we're starting a brand new series looking at how to create our very own bespoke coat block. As you can see in the image next to me here, we are going to create this very nice, reasonably fitted coat block. Now, there are a lot of different types of coat blocks you could draw. This is just one that we've chosen today, simply because it allows us to create a range of different types of coats, which we're going to be exploring over the next couple of weeks. In today's video, we are going to be using metric calculations, so centimeters and millimeters. And I'd like to let you know what I'm wearing today, which is the Zoso Studio Rivelin Ruffle dress, and this is in our Minerva core range Ramie fabric. And of course we'll tag those products below the video so that you can find them on our website should you wish to duplicate this look. As you follow along today, you're going to need some standard pattern drafting tools. Those are listed next to me here so you can see what those are clearly, and along with that you'll notice that we've also got some medium to heavy weight calico. Now, as you work through your toiles, I would thoroughly recommend that you use a similar weight or the similar type of calico, so just like bulk buy a number of meters as you work through the fit of your garment so that you are getting a consistency across your toiles. Obviously, the type of calico that you choose will affect the fit, so do bear in mind that as you're toiling and getting the fit right for your block, you need to use the same type of fabric. Okay, so one of the most important things to do as we're designing our coat block is very simply to measure our body. Now, we've got a number of different body measurements that we need, and those are the standard ones really that we use for pattern drafting. So let's just remind ourselves of how we do those specific measurements. Take those measurements and make a note of them. For our bust measurement, we take the tape measure and we wrap it around our widest bit of our bust. So if you just hold it in place, Kirsten, where it is around the widest point, and that looks really good, just turn around a little bit and you can see that we want it to be straight across the back as well, just like that. So make sure it's really straight, and then we're going to take a big breath in and back out again, and just make sure that you can run 2 fingers between your body and the tape measure as you take that measurement. Okay, so our point-to-point measurement is the widest part around our bust. So if you just want to put your fingers where you think the widest part is, and then you just take a measurement between the 2 at that point, and that is your point-to-point measurement. The next measurement we're going to do is our nape to waist. So what we've done is we've popped a piece of elastic where the waist is, and you can tell where the waist is because if you put your hands on your hip, just not hands above your hips, and then bend slightly to one side and the other, it should be where the natural break in the body is. You should be able to feel your ribs and then sort of come down slightly, and it should be above your hip bones. It's often higher than what you think it is. Great, so now we've got that sorted, just turn around for me. And the nape of our neck is this little bone that you should be able to feel here. It helps if you put your head forward, as Kirsten's doing. And then you grab your tape measure, match it up with the nape, and then just drop it down and take that reading there. And that is your nape to waist measurement. The waist to hip measurement is taken obviously from the waist to the hips. Now the hips are the widest part around our body, and we've just put another piece of nice thin elastic around where the widest part of our hips are. Obviously it needs to be the widest bit because that's the widest bit you're going to be pulling your clothes on and off from. So it's often just below or around where the bottom of the zip is on a pair of jeans, which is a nice way to tell where your hips are. In order to take this measurement, grab your tape measure, line it up with your waist, and then drop it straight down in a straight line down to your hips. And that's your waist to hip measurement. For the arm side depth, it's really helpful to have some elastic just sitting nice and snugly underneath your armpit at that point. So that gives you a really nice straight line to work with. Working from that point underneath the arm, we want to run the tape measure up to the top of the shoulders up here, and that is your arm side depth measurement. So the across back measurement is taken in a straight line, armpit to armpit. It does slightly curve round the body in towards the armpit because what we're trying to do is get this nice junction here where the body and the arm meet. Okay, so it's a straight measurement from one side to the other. Imagine if you were wearing a top and it was a sleeveless top, and that would be where you'd want the start to be where the curve of the top is, the end of the sleeve effectively at that point. And that's the measurement that you're trying to take there. For the across front measurement, again, we've put a piece of elastic underneath our armpits and straight across, and we're just going to measure armpit to armpit. We're basically measuring where the arm side of the top would be, because that's the measurement that we want for our block. Okay, so armpit, armpit, armpit to armpit. The shoulder length needs to be taken from the junction where our shoulder hits the neck and also where the arm hits the end of the shoulder. So it can be a little bit tricky to ascertain. Don't worry, you can tweak this on your block once you've drawn it up. So what we want to do first of all is find out where the end is. So imagine you had a straight line across your shoulders. It's the point where the straight line stops and the curve of the shoulder starts. So on you, it's around here at this point. And likewise, it's trying to figure out where the break of the neck is. Obviously, it is a curve. So what we're trying to do is figure out where the bottom of the curve would be if we had a round neck line that was as close to our neckline as possible. So grab your tape measure, start at the end of the shoulder, and then work your way in to where you think the neckline needs to be. Our neck size is one that we take around our body, so it's a circumference measurement, and we're going to drape the tape measure around the body, and we're actually trying to get it where our two clavicle bones are at the front and also at the back, if you just turn around for us, where the nape is at the back as well. So that is like a nice round measurement that you're going to take. Just you take that a few times, because with a round measurement it's really easy to get that wrong, so do take it a couple of times. Another really easy way to do this measurement is to pop a necklace on, a little chain necklace, and just sort of dangle and hold that around your neck where you think that is, and then you can measure the length of the necklace and just follow the shape of the necklace around your neck too. Okay, so in front of me here, I've got a nice big sheet of paper. Obviously at home, I would recommend that you use dot and cross paper or some type of paper that's squared so that you can make sure that you're getting nice, neat rectangles. I'm just using a clear sheet of paper, so at home it's really clear where the lines are on the screen above. I'm also going to be using my body measurements, which are written out here, and that's just so you can see exactly which ones I'm using as I draft out the block. Obviously your body measurements will be completely different to mine, and that's totally fine, but you can still follow along with the principles, and that's quite helpful just to see one block drawn up. Don't be surprised if when you've drawn it up your block does look different to mine. That's because everyone's body is different, and so that's to be expected. And as always, with the blocks, we're using sort of standard formulas to create this block. So once we have made the block and cut it out and sewn it up together, I expect that there will be some fitting areas to resolve as you develop your block and refine it further. This is a fantastic starting point though. So let's get straight on into it. To start off with, take your bust measurement, tap it into your calculator and divide it by 2. Now, I should have said that when we're drafting, we only draft half of our front and half of our back. So a lot of the measurements that we're going to work with today, we're going to be saying, take the bust measurement, divide it by 2. And that's simply because we're only working with half of the body. Then we're going to add 10 centimetres, and that 10 centimetres is allowing for ease. Obviously the coat block has a lot more ease than a fitted bodice or fitted dress. So we need to add that in to our block. Whatever length you've got there, we're just going to draw a line at the top of the sheet of paper that is that length. Next, draw a point from here that is just 2 centimetres long. We'll then label that NP for nape, point. We're going to continue drafting a whole load of construction lines, which are grid lines basically, centre front, centre back, bust, waist and hips. Those are going to form our basic grid for our block, which we'll then draw in later. Next, take your arm side depth, tap it into your calculator and add 4 centimetres. Whatever distance you've got there, we're going to continue this line here by that amount. So for me, it's another 25 centimetres. Just make sure that it's being squared off really nicely from the top. Label that point bust. Then take your nape to waist, tap it into your calculator and add 0.5 centimetres. So whatever that distance is, continue this line along from the nape point all the way down to that distance that you've got there. So for me, I'm just going to extend it to 40 centimetres and we'll label that our waist. The final one we want is very simply our waist to hip. So we're then going to extend this line from the waist down by our waist to hip measurement. And we can label that hip. Measure the length of this line. Whatever the length of the line is here, just square down from this side all the way down by exactly the same amount. And then just square across. Great. To finish this next section, what we're just going to do is draw 2 lines across the grid for our bust and our waist. Okay, label this one up here centre front and this one down here centre back. Now we're going to draw our back half of our body on this side and our front half of our body on this side. Take your neck size, tap it into your calculator and divide it by 5. Then add 0.4 centimetres for ease and just mark that distance away from the neck point along the top line here. Then just find a nice soft curve from the neck point to that point you just drew. Now this is a block line, so I'm just going to go over this in a nice fat marker pen so it's really clear on the screen that this is part of my block. This is the back of my neck. But obviously at home you guys should be using a nice sharp pencil. Okay, next, find the midpoint between the bust line and the nape point. And then we're just going to square across. So tap the distance into your calculator, divide it by 2, mark that distance along here, and then just square across. You probably just want to square across about halfway across the grid. Next, take your arm side depth measurement and divide it by 4. Mark that distance away from the neck point down the centre back line, and then square across. Take your across back measurement and divide it by 2. Then add 1.5 centimetres for ease. Mark that distance away from the centre back along the bust line. And then just square all the way up. We're going to work along this top line here and draw a line that's parallel 2 centimetres taller, 2 centimetres above. Next, take your shoulder measurement, tap it into your calculator and add 2 centimetres. We're adding that 2 centimetres because obviously the whole volume of the outer garment needs to be sort of bigger. We don't want it to be close fitting to our shoulder. We want it to extend slightly to give us a bit more ease as we put the garment on. Now place your ruler up here at the top shoulder point there, and you want the length that you've got on your calculator, for me 14.5, and you want that length to hit that top line that you just drew there. So 14.5, keeping that there and pivoting nicely, the length of my line is now 14.5. Yours will be something different. Draw that in with a nice finished line. This forms part of your block, just like that. Excellent. Okay, so we drafted out our neckline and our shoulder and done loads of amazing grid work. We're now going to leave the back and we're actually going to move on to the front for a little while. Take your neck size and divide it by 5. Add 0.2 centimetres, again just for ease. Then working along the centre front line up there, mark a point that is that distance that you just calculated away from the centre front line. There we go. Then take your neck size and divide it by 5 again, and then just add 0.3 this time, and we're going to drop this line and mark a point from that top corner that is that length you've just calculated. Now, what I would recommend at this point is that you just square off about 1 centimetre, maybe ½ a centimetre. And what we want to do is then just find a nice soft curve between the two. Okay, something like that. And again, this is your nice front neckline and it forms part of the block, so let's just draw that in. Okay, we're going to draw in our dart now. The first thing to do is take your dart measurement. So the only measurement that you may not be able to do, and you'll notice that we're going to need it, is actually our dart measurement size. Now, the size of our dart depends on the size of our bust. So I'm going to pop up on the screen now in front of me a little chart that shows you what your dart size should be based on your bust size. So take a look at that. You can pause the screen if you need to, and just write down what your dart size needs to be. For me, my bust circumference is 89 centimetres, so I'm going to be using a dart size of 6.1 centimetres on my block. Now this dart size is obviously just based on a calculation. It's a rough estimate, so this is something that you may well need to refine as part of your fit process. Okay, so whatever your dart size is, for me 6.1, just mark that away from that neck point there. You'll notice that we've got our point-to-point measurement here. I want you to take that measurement, divide it by 2, and whatever distance you've got, I want you to work along this bust line, and from the centre front, mark that distance away from the centre front along your bust line. Draw a line from the top of the neck down to that point you just drew, and then measure the length of that line. For me, the length of the line is 27.2 centimetres. I'm then going to draw my other dart leg so that the ruler starts at that point down there and comes up to this point here that I just drew my little help point. Draw the new dart leg to be the same length as the first dart leg that you drew. So you'll notice that it's actually stopping just below that line, and that's totally fine. We want our dart legs, when they're closed up together, to match up perfectly, and as we draft like this, they will. Now from the top of that dart leg you just drew, mark a point and draw a line, which is like a little help line, from that point all the way down to this point here. This is so that we can get the angle correct for our shoulder. Next, take this measurement of the shoulder at this point, tap that into your calculator, and then minus 1 centimetre. Mark that length from the top of the dart leg, and then square down by 1.5 centimetres. Then join that point up to the dart leg with a slight curve. And that is our shoulder and bust done for the front. Brilliant. So what we're going to do next is just work out this arm side line very simply. So we've got a little bit to do there along the bust line, drawing some help lines and then drawing that nice big curve. So we want to take the across front measurement and divide it by 2. And then we want to take half the measurement of this. So whatever your dart size is, divide that by 2 and add it to that calculation. And then add another 1 centimetre for ease. Whatever distance that is, mark it along the bust line from the centre front and then square up. Okay. Next, take this measurement of this length over here and then divide it by 3. Whatever that distance is that you've got on your calculator there, we're just going to mark up from this line that we just drew and mark up that distance here. So this is going to form a little help point for us in a minute with our arm side. Next, find the midpoint between this point here and here. So tap that length into your calculator and just divide it by 2. Mark that distance, which should be bang in the middle of this here. And then just square down all the way down to the hips. Next, we're just going to draw a little line that is a little help point in here that is like 45 degrees angled up from the bust line, and it is 3.7 centimetres long. So grabbing this little ruler, I'm going to mark a point that's 45 degrees away from that junction there. And my line needs to be 3.7 centimetres long. Repeat for this side over here, but this time it needs to be 3.2 centimetres. And now very simply, we just want to draw a curve from the shoulder point down to the help point, across to there, down to here, which is effectively going to be our side seam, up to this point, meeting with here, and then up to that shoulder point there for the back. Now these little points are just help guides, and what we really want is a nice smooth curve all the way around that arm side. We don't want it to be sort of too jagged, so just focus more on getting a smooth curve, something that looks sensible, rather than being too meticulous about definitely hitting every single one of those points. Okay, so something that looks a little bit like that. Okay, so at this point we've done everything we need to do to the block. However, what I would suggest is that you just do a quick check on the hips and make sure you've got enough ease and enough space around there to accommodate your hips. So when we drafted the width of our hips, it was actually half of our bust measurement plus 10 centimetres. So what I would do is I would just check that length, measure that line, but then I would also just check your hip dimension. We've not got it here, but just measure your hip, tap it into your calculator and divide it by 2. If the length here is less than half of your hip circumference, then you need to adapt your block slightly. If it is less, as mine is, my half of my hip is 51 centimetres and I've got about 54.5 centimetres from here to here, I know that that's going to fit me because I've got, what, 3 centimetres ease all the way around my hips, which is fine. However, if I didn't have enough ease and if that was too small, then we would need to look at adapting it. So let me talk you through how you do that. Let's say I had a hip of 120 centimetres rather than 102. What I would do is tap that distance into my calculator, the circumference of my hips, and divide it by 2. This is going to tell me the length, the minimum length that I need my block to be, which is 60 centimetres. But then, of course, I want to add some ease. So then I would add between 5 and 10 centimetres ease. It's up to you. I'm just going to add 5 centimetres ease into that and I get 65 in total. Now then measure the length of your hip. So for me, 54.5 minus the length of your hip line. Okay, and then whatever you've got there, that tells you how much extra length you need in your block at the hip point. And we can add half of it to the front and half of it to the back. So just divide that increase by 2. And then what you'd very simply do is just add that distance that you've calculated to one side here. And that would be from the centre back to there would be an extra, whatever you need, in this example, 5 centimetres. And then for the back, you just draw a straight line going from the arm side down to your hip line. And that line here would then become your back side seam. Then you would do the same. You would then add whatever distance you need, let's say 5.2, to the front hip line at that point, and then you would draw a line from there going up to your arm size, straight up like this. And then that line would then form the side seam of your front. And that's a very simple way of making sure that you've got enough space on your block to add volume into your hips. However, the last thing to do once you've just checked your hip circumference and made sure that's going to work okay, is then just to finish off your block. Draw in your side seams. Draw in your centre back from your nape to your hip, and then draw in your centre front. Just annotate your pattern piece. Brilliant, and that's all there is to it. So well done for getting so far. That was a lot of different calculations and loads of fun drawing it. Next week we're going to look at how to draft a 2-piece sleeve to go with our gorgeous coat block. Now if you don't want to do a 2-piece sleeve, you just want to do a single sleeve, you can refer back to the previous video that we did for our fitted bodice, and the technique that I showed you there in terms of how to draft out the sleeve piece is exactly the same for the coat. So if you just wanted to draft a very simple sleeve with one pattern piece, so it's like flat, go for it and do that. But next week I thought it'd be really interesting to explore the concept of how to draft a 2-piece sleeve, because a lot of fitted coats do have 2-piece sleeves, so it's really nice to see that. We'll then show you how to create your own pattern pieces and how to sew it up together. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you next week as we explore how to draft our sleeve.